Denise Dresser, next week, President Obama is going to Toluca, Mexico to meet with his NAFTA counterparts. If you had 5 minutes with President Obama, what in your view is the most critical things to tell him about Mexico today and where it's going?
I think I'd tell him to appreciate the reform process that is underway, that has taken on many of the ideological underpinnings of revolutionary nationalism and is moving the country in what seems to be a modernizing direction. But at the same time, I'd tell him to be cautious about those reforms because their implementation is still up in the air, and in the past, Mexico's modernization process was sabotaged by vested interests, as we saw under the Salinas period in the late 80s and 1990s. And I fear that the same thing could happen under the PRI and under Enrique Peña Nieto because some of the reforms have not been well thought through. They depend on good implementation, on government regulation, and many of them seem geared to reinventing state intervention in the economy and increasing public spending. And that leads me to believe that the PRI wants to continue to buy clienteles and shore up corporatist support. So there is a modernizing effort underway, but I think in the future it might be held back by all of those within the party and within Peña Nieto's electoral and political base who don't want to see those reforms carried through. Peña Nieto's intentions may be good, but I think they could end up being sabotaged by all of those who have a vested interest in the status quo. I'd also tell him that Mexico needs to rethink its security policy and its war on drugs. We are waging a war against an enemy that we will never be able to beat. And a large part of the responsibility for what is going on comes from American drug policy. Mexico is marching down a contradictory path, providing lives and weapons and military support to wage a war that in the US is no longer being fought, given the trend towards the legalization of marijuana in so many states. So I would tell him that he has paid lip service constantly to American responsibility and to the need to control arms and to control consumption. And I think at the same time, the US has not really made an effort to do any of those things. And Obama has not spent enough political capital on weapons control or on immigration. And I think those are the two domestic issues that would really make a difference in terms of the bilateral relationship.
After a year, what is the standout achievement of President Peña Nieto? And what is the most important or difficult challenge going forward?
I think his triumphs lie in an education reform, a telecommunications reform, an energy reform, a political reform. The reformist impetus is noticeable, and it's quite a change for a country that was trapped in legislative paralysis. So he managed to bring together a consensus for change that had eluded his predecessors. At the same time, as I mentioned earlier, those reforms are going to depend on good implementation and on the political will to take on the veto centers that in the past have stood between Mexico and modernity. I'm talking about the TV networks, the unions, the bureaucracy, the monopolies, all of those who have a stake in maintaining Mexico as it has been, a largely oligopolistic economic system, political system that is still lacking in terms of representation and accountability, and a country that is based on extensive rent-seeking and clientelist and corporatist networks that survive and that may survive the reform process, thwarting it and leading Mexico to look good, but the reality on the ground for millions of Mexicans has not changed.
Denise Dresser, welcome back to Berkeley, and thank you very much.
Thank you for the invitation to return to my home.